Hey guys, I hope that you're well. Today I am dedicating an entire video to one of my most frequently asked questions, and that is, hey Christiane, I want to go on my first ever solo trip, but I want to make sure that I'm not going to get lonely and that I'm going to have a good time. So I want to go somewhere that's good for solo travellers, but also first timers. I'm quite nervous. Where should I go? But before we get into this, I just wanted to let you know that my new clothing line is now available. If you're new here, I have just this week launched my very own clothing line called Solo, and it's going to be travel clothing and accessories for backpackers and people who want to look good on their travels, but also not miss out on those practical features. We have just launched our very first items, which is a black crop top, a mauve crop top, and a very practical bum bag. I will link the website in the description so you guys can shop now. We ship worldwide. And there are new products coming in the future. This is just the beginning. Okay, now back to the question, where to go as a first-time solo traveller? So first of all, I'd like to say that I don't think that there is a single place on earth where you can guarantee to have a good time, stay 100% safe, not get lonely. I know that's not what you want to hear right now, but I am not here to sugarcoat things for you guys. There are, however, some destinations that I personally would favour for solo travel and some destinations that I definitely would not favour for solo travel, and that's what I want to talk about with you today. My first ever experience as a solo traveller was in New Zealand. I arrived in Auckland by myself knowing that I have 1 month to travel. I was 19 at the time, and I decided to do the Kiwi Experience, which is a hop-on hop-off bus where there are various different routes available that you can purchase. This was probably the best induction I could have had to solo travelling because it was almost like a group tour. I found that the majority of people who I jumped on the bus with right at the beginning, I was with the majority of the way through the entire country. But there was still flexibility in the fact that usually you had a few different accommodation options to choose from, and also with it being hop on hop off, if you really liked somewhere and wanted to stay a bit longer, you absolutely could do that. You just hop back on another bus when you wanted to rejoin the route. So it was perfect for me. I felt safe, I had made so many friends, and I was taken to the most insane spots around the country, and that trip still to this day is one of the best travel months I've ever had. There are other hop on hop off bus companies in New Zealand. There's Stray, for example. From what I've heard from Stray, it's really good, but suitable for a more mature audience. And by more mature, I don't mean like elderly. I basically mean the Kiwi Experience is notorious for being like a party bus, and I'd say the age range is generally between 18 and 28. And I think with Stray, the age range is probably more between like 25 and 35, and you still have loads and loads of fun, but you're not getting wasted absolutely every night. That's a massive generalisation, but that's the best way that I can explain it to you guys. Similarly to New Zealand, Australia is another fantastic destination for first-time solo travellers. I'd actually go as far to say that it's the most popular destination for first-time solo travellers, in particular the East Coast, because you've got the Greyhound hop-on hop-off bus, which is the most popular form of transport for backpackers getting up and down the East Coast. There was a reason I blew this up actually, so that I could physically show you. So you've got New Zealand down here, and then we've got Australia just here, and then the East Coast. This is where most backpackers are going to be travelling. As it's a coast, you're either going to be travelling one way or the other, which makes it really nice and easy to make friends, because you'll find that most people will be travelling in the same direction as you. There's also, of course, so many awesome hostels and things to do and tours geared towards young travellers and backpackers. If you are going to Australia as a first-time solo traveller and you're quite nervous, you're not entirely sure where to start, the best thing that I can recommend you is to do the Welcome to Travel tour in Melbourne. I did this last year, so it is tried and tested, and the team are bloody brilliant. They go above and beyond, not just to make sure that you have a good time, but to make sure that you really get settled into Aussie life. Whether you're about to go travel up the East Coast, they can help you with planning and advice, or maybe you've just started a working holiday visa, they can help you set up your tax file number, your SIM card, even getting a job. Basically all the things that you need to get done when you arrive in Australia to settle yourself in. I cannot recommend them enough. And I still have a discount code for them at the checkout. Make sure you type in BB50 and you will get $50 off the 8-day tour. I still get messages from travellers who I've referred onto the tour, and they message me telling me what a good time they've had and how glad they are that they did the tour. But some of you may may not want to go to Western countries like this, perhaps because they're too expensive, or maybe you just want to have a completely different cultural experience. I always get asked about Southeast Asia. We all know that it's popular with backpackers, but which countries specifically are the best for first-time solo travellers? I'd say Thailand is definitely the most popular, and doing a like Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia square route. This I'd say is the easiest and most comfortable route to do for a first-time solo backpacker because it's the most popular. Many backpackers are on this circuit, so you're very likely to meet other people along the way and find people who are like-minded and wanting to do the same kind of things as you. Alternatively, you could just do the Thailand Islands. These are very popular with backpackers. Loads of things to do, loads of hostels. You'll definitely meet people very easily. However, they are quite party-heavy destinations, so depending on how you like to travel, it may be not the most authentic Asia experience that you're after. But Christiane, what about Bali? Okay, personally, I wouldn't necessarily recommend Bali as the first place you go as a first-time solo traveller. This is mainly because you can't really get public transport around in Bali. You can get a Gojek, which is like their equivalent of an Uber, or you can get a taxi. And although this transport is cheap compared to Western standards, it's not exactly cheap for travellers. You could hire a scooter or a motorbike to get around, but if it's your very first time solo travelling, chances are you don't know how to ride one yet. And in Bali, there's no particular route that travellers do. There's hotspots for sure, but people will be travelling them in a random order, so it will be more difficult to meet people who are heading in the same direction as you. And Christiane, what about the Philippines? As many of you know, I solo backpacked to the Philippines for 2 months earlier on this year, and I had a wonderful time. I found it very easy to navigate as a solo traveller. I am aware that being able to ride a scooter made my experience a lot better for me, because otherwise I'd be getting tricycles around everywhere, which obviously the price starts to bump up a fair bit. The hostel scene in the Philippines is great. It's really easy to meet people and have a good time. However, there is not one particular route that backpackers do in the Philippines. As you've probably seen, it's just islands scattered around everywhere, so most backpackers will be taking all different kinds of routes, which makes it much more difficult to make friends which you'll be travelling with for a long period of time. It was more a case of meeting new friends in each new destination, which I was okay with and I really enjoyed, but that's definitely something to keep in mind if that's something that you're concerned about. And Christiane, what about the rest of Asia? So India and Sri Lanka are also very, very popular with backpackers, but both of them are quite intense. I've never been to India, but my experience in Sri Lanka, I've never been so stared at as a solo female traveller in my life. I didn't feel unsafe at any point, but I did often feel very uncomfortable, and for that reason I would not necessarily recommend it for a first-time solo traveller, especially if you're female, because that really can knock your confidence and be a shock to the system, especially if you're not used to it. I really, really do want to travel India solo one day, but it's going to be intense and I want to be ready for it. And as for countries like China, Japan, South Korea, I've never been, but from what I've heard, the backpacker scene just isn't as big there. I personally am not bothered about trying to go to these places solo. I'd love to visit them maybe as a group or with a friend or with a partner one day, but that's just my personal opinion though. I'm sure there's been many other solo travellers who have enjoyed their time there, but for me there are just many other countries that are higher priorities for me when it comes to travelling solo. And Christiane, what about the Americas? North America, Central America, South America. Central America is the first region of the world that I backpacked completely solo. Like, I wasn't doing a tour, I wasn't doing a hop on hop off bus, I was just travelling around by myself, getting public transport, staying in hostels that I just rocked up at. It was very spontaneous, I was just doing what I wanted when I wanted. I did this in 2015 when I was 21 years old. It took me 9 to 10 weeks to travel from Panama City up to Cancun in Mexico. And I had the time of my life on this trip. The backpacking culture in Central America is strong. Loads of really cool hostels, loads of things to do. Also, because Central America is long and thin, you find yourself meeting people and traveling with them in the same direction. So you're knowing them for a longer period of time, which is really nice. You'll find that this is a recurring thing that I keep saying in this video. If there are kind of places where you can only really travel in one direction or the other, this is really favourable. because you're going to meet people a lot easier that you're able to carry on traveling with, because chances are they're going in the same direction as you. I felt very safe in Central America. The biggest challenge though was that I had to speak Spanish. Not everyone in Latin America speaks English, unlike in Southeast Asia where pretty much everyone has a basic level of English. A lot of people in Central America did have a basic level of English, but a lot of people also didn't, and in those instances you really need to be able to converse by yourself and know the basics. But you know, I loved the challenge of that, and I wouldn't say it's the easiest place in the world to travel solo for the first time, but it's definitely doable, definitely enjoyable. The USA, on the other hand, I would not like to travel solo. There's not a big backpacking culture, the hostels are all a bit shit, you can't really travel around the country on public transport, and there's definitely not one particular route that people do either. And so for all of these reasons, I do not deem it a good place to solo travel, especially if you're a first timer. I do, however, think that a group tour in America is a great idea, so that you're immediately grouped together with other people, you're all doing the same thing, and you have a bus that's taking you to all the best spots. You can of course rent a car in America, that's a very popular way to travel. But personally, renting a car by myself, I think I'd get very lonely and quite frankly just quite bored doing that by myself, but that's just a personal preference. And South America, well, I've never been, but I am going to Colombia and Ecuador in just a few months' time, and I am so excited. They are big backpacking destinations. The reason that it's taken me up until now to finally head to South America is because I do believe that it will be a little bit more challenging to solo travel rather than some countries in Southeast Asia, because one, I'm obviously going to have to be speaking Spanish the majority of the time, and two, because they're very, very big, roundish countries, there's not necessarily going to be one backpacker route which people stay on, so you kind of have to figure out your own itinerary which works best for you, but you may not necessarily be with people along the way. I'm also definitely aware that I'm going to have to be looking out for my safety a bit more, especially in the cities. I'm not worried, but I know that it's just something that I have to be aware of and be careful of. But I'm so excited for this new adventure, and I'm really excited to be going solo. I think it's going to be a great challenge and a great adventure. And Christiane, what about Europe? Where's Europe? There's Europe. Interrailing around Europe is very popular with solo travellers, especially in southern and eastern Europe. The backpacking culture is strong. If I was interested in cities and history a bit more, I probably would have done this by now. I do think that Europe is probably a really great place for solo travellers, but I'm not. I prefer more exotic and adventurous destinations, so that is what I prioritise. The only thing that puts me off solo travel around Europe is, again, how there's not one particular route, so it will be harder to make friends over a longer period of time. But Europe is typically mostly safe. Obviously I'm making massive generalisations here, but I'm kind of trying to talk about the whole world in a video that's less than 20 minutes, so sorry. And Christiane, what about Africa? This massive continent in the middle, which I have not spoken about yet. I personally have only desired to travel Africa as part of a group. I don't believe that there's a big backpacker scene there. My friend Cole from Canada once backpacked the entire west side of Africa over 6 months, and he told me that sometimes he went for weeks without seeing one other tourist. That is mad. There are more travelled African countries like Morocco, Egypt, South Africa, Kenya, Tanzania. I still don't know whether I'd want to travel these solo, especially if I was a first-time solo traveller, unless I was on a tour where I felt secure and looked after. And finally, we are going to touch on, I don't know if you can see this, the Middle East and like Western Asia. And do you know what? Countries like Kazakhstan, Pakistan, Turkmenistan, Iraq, Iran are countries that I never even considered travelling about a year or two ago. However, I've been hearing more and more positive stories from travellers of how great it is to travel there and how it's so much more beautiful and calm and peaceful than essentially what you hear in the media. I've been hearing increasingly positive things, and now I'm really, really curious, and I do actually would love to go solo backpacking there one day. But I do think with still much of the unknown in these countries, I probably wouldn't go there as a first-time solo traveller. But to be honest, it really doesn't matter where you go solo travelling for the first time. I personally think the most important thing is that that you are genuinely interested to go to that destination, because then even if you're not making friends, you're still going to be just stoked to be in that destination and excited to go and explore, and you're not going to be so fussed about how well you're getting on with the other travellers. My next biggest tip to give you the biggest chance possible to have the best time is to stay in hostels. I know it's not everyone's favourite thing to stay in a dorm room, but I can assure you it just makes the experience so much more enjoyable to be sharing it with other travellers, and you meet people so much easier. I recommend having a look on Hostel World for the destination that you want to go to see what the best rated hostels are, and specifically look out for good atmosphere if making friends is high on your priorities. And when you do arrive in your destination, be active. Join group tours, whether they're long tours or short tours. Sign up for the evening events. Put yourself out there. This can be kind of really taking yourself outside of your comfort zone at first, especially if you're more introverted, but I can assure you by doing this, by putting yourself out there and putting yourself outside of your comfort zone, you're going to gain so much more from that. You're going to be given so many more opportunities, and your whole experience is just going to be a lot better. Something to bear in mind is that generally, small towns or villages are much better for backpackers than big cities. They are generally safer, more chilled, you can normally just walk around everywhere, and I find them much easier to meet people. You'll normally be starting your backpacking trip flying into a big city and staying in a hostel there, but please don't be disheartened if you arrive somewhere for the very first time solo and you're in a city and you just feel a bit disconnected from everyone. That's actually very normal in a city hostel, I find. Just wait until you get out into the wilderness, the countryside, the beaches, the smaller towns, because that's when I always find I have the best backpacker experiences. And the final thing that I wanted to say is that you will find when you go solo traveling for the first time that you adjust to the solo travel life very quickly, and you'll probably find very quickly like, this is okay, now I feel like I can go to this place and go to the more challenging places. But obviously the very hardest thing is just booking that initial flight, making that initial decision and journey to go somewhere solo. That's the hardest thing. But once you can break through that very first time or break through that very first trip, I can assure you that very quickly you will find how badass you are and how much more capable you are than what you may have thought. So a positive note to end on. I hope this video has helped some of you out. Maybe it's given some of you a bit of insight or peace of mind, or just food for thought for some places in the world. Please remember that these are all my personal opinions. A lot of the destinations, as I've mentioned, I've never actually been to before, but I'm just telling you how I currently feel about them based on whatever I've heard from various sources. I imagine if you've watched this video that you are planning a solo trip, so wherever you choose to go, I hope you have the best time. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Please buy my travel clothes if you want to look extra fresh on your travels, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!